Are you an idiot? Well, you're in good company. There are about 8 billion idiots on this planet, and that number grows every day. Don't be the guy or gal that says, "I'm not an idiot," because that makes you the biggest idiot of all. We all have our moments of brilliance and our moments of idiocy. Embrace it, folks. Don't be ashamed. Without those idiot moments, we would never be able to appreciate our brilliance. Welcome to I Love My Idiot, a podcast about the idiots we love, the idiots we loathe, and the idiots we can't seem to avoid. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Visit our website at ilovemyidiot.com.
Welcome to another episode of I Love My Idiot.
I'm your equal host, Clyde November.
And I'm Rosie November.
It's great to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
That's right. We're super grateful for all of our listeners. And we did a Facebook and Instagram live video this week. We had a great turnout. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to us, both on here and on social media.
Turns out quarantining is pretty good for podcasters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. We have more time to both podcast and edit. So it's great.
Yeah. Which I have to say, if you enjoy our podcast, you've got to share it on Facebook. Help more people find our podcast, because here's the thing. They're all going to be stuck inside. If not already, they will be soon. They're going to need something to get through that time. I've already gotten through everything on Netflix and Hulu. I'm bored. I'm looking for new stuff, and I'm sure other people are in the same boat. So share our podcast. Do us a favor. Do your friends a favor. Do yourself a favor, because then you can talk to them about our podcast.
Anyways, enough about us. So Clyde actually got out of the house this week for the first time in like 6 days.
I did. It was terrifying driving around, seeing a, post-coronavirus world. It was horrifying. In fact, it looked the exact same. So all the zombies out there are undercover or something.
Yeah, they're like hiding in their houses. I don't know. It was pretty sweet, like getting around, no traffic. But we did go to a park, and surprisingly, there were many people there. So there are people who are getting out and about.
I don't know how long that's going to last. Like, eventually, is the government going to put like a cease and desist
on leaving your home?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I've heard it's happening in other countries. I don't know.
It was really exciting, though, to get out of the house. I think the kids were really grateful because, they've been stuck inside with you. In fact, little James was crying to me because he said that this has been the worst week of his entire life, even worse than the week he spent in the hospital when he was like 5, because you made him do math all week.
Yeah, the boy misses school because apparently his teacher is not as rigorous as Mr. November.
He would rather go to school than spend a week with you at home. So whatever you're doing, it's just not right.
Whatever I'm doing, it's working, all right? The boy has already improved 3 grade levels. I'm just telling you.
Anyways, Mr. November's at-home schooling is no fun for our kids. Like, they hate it.
Yeah, they do, which I don't blame them. I mean, honestly, I'm not your run-of-the-mill dad, right?
Sure.
I know stuff. I make sure our kids know stuff, too, so.
You even got little Rosie doing math, which is funny because she's like 4.
She's going to be ready for kindergarten. I got her on this math program. Gosh. It's this app. I'm not going to say the name of it, but it started out real cartoony and appeared to have nothing to do with math. It was asking questions like, what color is this? I was like, okay, this isn't math. And then all of a sudden, after it kind of hooks the kids in with the storyline of these characters, they go to a fair, and now they have to start counting stuff and adding stuff, and it's great. So she's adorable. Watching her do math is hilarious.
I know.
Because when we started, she didn't know what the word plus meant. But I feel like our big accomplishment is she now knows what plus means.
Exactly.
I mean, she can't do it, but she knows what it means.
She knows it means you add stuff together.
Yeah, you're like combining stuff. Yeah. Or you mush it together, in her words. She keeps saying, and then mush it together.
Then you mush it together, and that's plussing, Yeah,
it's adorable.
It is adorable. Do you think a lot of parents with children are struggling right now to find activities for them?
I do. I feel like if the school districts have kind of opened up and said, hey, these resources are out there, it's probably not as challenging. Being on Facebook and stuff like that, I've heard a lot of parents saying they are quite frustrated trying to figure out what they're doing for their kids.
Well, I volunteered in your classroom like, I don't know, a handful of times, and your job is a nightmare. Like, teaching children stuff is hard work.
Yeah, it's not an easy job.
It's frustrating.
It's not just put on Magic School Bus like a lot of people would probably assume, you know? You're constantly giving kids a new task and then evaluating whether they get it and trying to immediately assess it to figure out, like, can we move on? Do we need to cover this again? Did I do a crappy job teaching it? So it's a lot of work, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about my job because I love my job.
Yeah.
I've done it long enough where I'm at the point where I'm doing a lot of that without having to really think about it. It just kind of is coming natural as just this is what you do in the classroom.
Yeah. But all these people with kids home right now, they have not been properly trained to be teachers of their children. So there's some parents out there struggling right now because they're, doing whether it's online schooling or these at-home schooling activities. Like, man, it's crazy.
It is crazy.
And you guys got extended for like another week. So you're going to be out of school for like a whole month.
We're going to be out at least till halfway through April. But honestly, I won't be surprised if it goes till May. It's
crazy. So, anyways, our hearts go out to all the moms and dads out there having to do schooling at home.
But put up the good fight, all right? It doesn't matter that it's hard and frustrating.
Yeah.
The key is with all of this, and here's the secret I'm going to tell you. This coming from a certified fifth grade teacher who has never won Teacher of the Year or anything like that. I'm not distinguished, but I am certified. Here's the thing. All you need is your kids' brains to stay sharp.
Yeah.
Right? You don't even necessarily have to teach them anything new or help them become geniuses. All you need them to do is read every day and do some kind of math. Those are the two important subjects. Read every day, do some kind of math. And you know what? If you have Netflix or something like that, there's a lot of like Planet Earth shows or something like that. Like, just for fun, throw in one of those. Have them watch that for a half an hour. That's better than, letting their brains rot on Power Rangers or whatever. So there's ways that they can become educated without necessarily you sitting down with a textbook and being like, all right, today we are going over the distributive property or whatever, so.
And that's all I'm going to allow of Clyde's soapbox. Anyhow, we got you out of the house, Clyde.
We did.
It was very exciting.
It was joyous. Now, it was quite a drive that we went through. We went through some mountainous country, which was beautiful.
Except for Rosie wanting to puke next to you. I do not travel well.
Yeah, you get car sick very easily.
And the whole time I was just feeling really sick because we went up into the mountains and it was like really windy roads.
Yes, but you did tell me you wanted to see the forest.
I did.
So this was your call. I would have been just fine driving circles in our cul-de-sac.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I told you I wanted to get out of the house and do something, and you were like, as long as it's somewhere where there are no people. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not a lot of options. So we went out to the woods.
We did stop at a park, saw some people, kept driving, right?
Yeah.
We're like, no, not going to risk it.
Dude, we saw a herd of like 40 elk, though. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, we saw some wildlife. We saw some deer.
Bald eagles.
We saw a bald eagle.
Yeah.
What else did we see? We saw some goats in someone's
farm,
Now, here's the thing, though. Going for drives with us, our kids have a different experience than we had as children driving with our parents because of technology. Nowadays, kids have phones in the back, iPads. They have the little like movie screens where they can watch DVDs.
Yeah.
They don't know the pain that we knew when we were growing up of like having to look out the window for your entertainment.
Sure.
What were some things you did as a kid to entertain you on a long drive?
So I've always gotten really car sick. So I spend most of the time sleeping or having my eyes closed while I'm in the car.
That sounds horrible.
I know. It's horrible. It is horrible. But
Actually,
it's the only way to get
honestly,
through it.
It doesn't sound too bad. I always wished I could sleep in the car. But when I was growing up, I was never a napper. Like, I don't remember ever napping as far back as my memories go. Whereas you are still a napper.
Oh, I love napping.
Yeah.
In fact, if I could sleep 75% of my life, that would be a happy times for me.
Yeah, it makes the weekends really fun, let me tell you. So
yeah, Clyde only gets activities between my naps.
So I'm going to ask you about some things that I did, and you tell me if they were ever things that you guys did.
Okay.
So first of all, there was the license plate game where you tried to see how many states you could find.
No.
You never did that.
No. Our family weren't dorky like you Novembers. Like, you guys have games. Everywhere you go, you make games. You're like, oh, I'm going to make up this new game. In my family, you just got in the car, you shut up, and you, like, looked out the window or slept. Because otherwise, Mom would freaking yell at you and hit you with stuff. So,
dude, that's hilarious. My mom would make a list with all 50 states.
Oh my gosh!
And then,
of course, she did.
You know, every time we'd find one, she'd highlight it.
Why am I not surprised?
Sometimes we'd even see like Alberta from Canada or something, so she'd have to write on an extra. Sometimes you'd see Washington, D.C., and every now and then you'd see something that you totally wouldn't expect, right? Like something from like
riveting,
Berlin or something like that. No, it was freaking awesome. It was like, if you saw the Berlin license plate, it was dynamite. Like a whole family would cheer in the van, right?
Yeah, well, your mom was the first person I ever met that had an activity book. And within this book were little pockets. And, like, there were, like, laminated cutouts of people and, like, things to color and, like, puzzles.
I used to take that book to church when I was little. One of the pockets.
I'm like, are you for reals? Like, you made this? And she's like, yes. And your children will have them, too, because this is what good moms do. And I was like, okay. In fact,
you're like, can I just have this one or do I have to make a new one?
In fact, Mama November never sleeps. Like, she is not somebody that, you know, requires a lot of sleep. And I remember when you and I first got married, she came over and we had little Rex fairly shortly after we got married because
I wonder why.
Premarital sex, everybody, don't do it. Or do it.
Or do it. It totally worked out for us.
Up to you, really.
It worked out for me anyways. Look at the person I'm with. Yeah, you think I would have landed her with a 2-year engagement? I don't think so.
No,
she would have saw the idiot and
it took marriage
roamed off.
And pregnancy for Clyde to keep Rosie. Anyways, she comes over at like 6:30 a.m. Like, who's awake at 6:30 a.m.?
Most normal people, actually. I'm awake at 6:30 a.m. My alarm rings at 6:30.
Like, sound asleep. Little Rex is sleeping in the bed next to me. Mama November just barges in and she's like, oh, were you sleeping? And I'm like, yeah, like every other normal person at 6:30 in the morning. And she's like, well, I've already done 2 loads of laundry and made my husband breakfast, and you are sleeping. And I was like, yeah, I'm not that person. Like, I'm still asleep sometimes at like 9:30 in the morning, which I think is a decent time to wake up.
Yeah. As great as all that sounds, I've never wanted you to be my mom, but it would be nice if you'd make me a bowl of soup when I'm sick. Like, it's all I ask. But you won't do it. You're just like, no. It's almost like you're afraid that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's
I don't know.
You do that, next thing you know, you're going to be doing laundry at 6:30 in the morning, you know?
I don't know. I'm just not a traditional wife. Like, I wish I was. I really do wish that I was more like Mama November and I could wake up at 6 a.m. and have you breakfast ready for you and the kids and like actually talking to people at that early in the morning because you're awake doing all that.
Yeah, but you're the moneymaker of the family, so maybe I should be the one up making you breakfast.
I don't know. It just, I do wish I was better, but this is just who I am. Like, I'm the person who, if I had a choice, would wake up at 9:30 every morning, go to bed at midnight every night, and that would be a happy life for me, and maybe a nap in the middle.
And then take a nap from 11 a.m. to about 8 at night.
Yeah. It's really funny because usually for work, I travel alone. But this most recent work trip I took, I traveled with a colleague. She just makes all this assumptions about me that I'm like this magical, mystical creature because I'm always happy and always cheery and I always have a good attitude. And so she just assumed that I'm always like that, right? Well, she tells me that the Uber is going to be there at 6:45 in the morning to take us to our conference. And I was like, just so you know, at 6:45 in the morning, like, this isn't pretty, you know, like, this is not a good sight. And she's like, whatever, Rosie, you're always amazing. Like, I'm sure you're awesome. Anyways, she still talks about it in the office about how that, like, I'm not even that human at 6:45 in the morning because I came down. My makeup's not even on yet. I'm like putting makeup on in the car because it's like took everything I had to get up and downstairs by 6:45 in the morning. And then I didn't speak to her for almost 2 hours.
Yeah, I learned this about you early on in our marriage.
She was like, I have never seen you not happy, but you're like definitely not really human before 8 o'clock in the morning. Like 8 o'clock in the morning is the minimum for me to start becoming human.
Yeah, Rosie is not pleasant anything short of 12 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. And that's no joke.
Exactly.
The woman needs her sleep.
I do. I require a lot of sleep.
So let me now pitch you the second game that we used to play in the car, and you tell me if it's something you conceivably could have done as a family, but it sounds like the answer is no. Did you ever play the alphabet game where you're looking out at signs or names of stores and you're trying to like find an A and then a B and then a C and then a D? Did you guys ever do that?
No.
Road trips with your family sound miserable.
How many times do I have to tell you nothing happened in the vehicle except silence? Like you would get hit if you even made a sound. Like today, little James yelled for like 25 minutes at little Rosie. While in the very back of the car, Rex was complaining that he had to pee every 5 minutes. That would never have happened in my car growing up. Like, you just peed your pants if you had to before you said something to mom, because she would seriously, like, whack you or, like, throw things at you.
She'd just have the flailing arm back there, just whacking whoever she can hit.
She once nailed me right in the head with an ice scraper, okay? You don't want to mess with my mom in the vehicle, so you were silent the entire time.
Interesting.
She did do bathroom breaks, though. Like, and she always told us where the bathrooms were going to be. So it was like, okay, there's a bathroom in 15 exits. And so you knew, okay, like, you know, a half hour or so.
Was that because your mom also had a small bladder?
Yeah.
Because I've been on trips with your mom, and it's like every 25 minutes.
Exactly. Like, we stopped at every rest area, got out, went to the bathroom. Like, our needs were met, so we didn't have to speak in the vehicle.
I see.
There is one thing, though, that my mom did, and I do the same thing. She sang in the car.
Okay, she sang.
So we always had music on, and we were always singing whenever we went somewhere.
Well,
there were no games, but there was always music.
At least that's something.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I remember you had the cassette player. You put it in.
Oh, yeah.
I can still hear the sound of like the click, click, and then the start of the reel. You know? Oh, this is the best.
You ever have...
And then you flip that thing. And you stick it back in. Sorry, I'm having a moment, Clyde. I'm having a moment.
You didn't have the kind of tape player that had the button that you could push and it automatically flipped it to the back side?
That came later.
Wow.
No.
Yeah, we actually didn't have one of those either. I remember seeing that in my friends' cars. I was like, dude, what is this technology?
My first CD player for the car actually had a cassette tape that you put the tape in, and it had a cord that went to the CD player. And then you pop that open, you put your CD in, and it played, like, over the radio. Did you have one of those?
Yeah, except that was not an official CD player. That was just like you bring your Walkman, hook it up to your tape player.
Dude, that was the CD player.
Yeah, that's hilarious, Rosie.
Yeah. My first boyfriend, he was, like, a big guy into like stereos and sound and all this stuff.
Would you drive around with one of those thumping boom boxes in the back?
Like he worked at like a knockoff Radio Shack. It wasn't the Radio Shack, but it was like a Circuit Radios or something.
Yeah.
And so he
not
got
a sponsor since they're out of business.
he like got discounts. And so when I met you guys, I actually had like those big booming speakers in the back of my car and like the best CD player in my car, but it was only because of him.
Yeah, I remember that actually. And I was like, why is this girl listening to country music with these thumping speakers? Like, this doesn't quite fit.
Yeah, I know.
You
I never
needed
had
some
them
hip hop
thumping.
to go with that.
Yeah, I never listened to it too loud, but whatever.
See, here's the thing. When I would go on family drives, my dad became like the tour guide.
Sure.
Right? Because we were always so bored. And so his whole idea was he's going to use all this scenery to keep his children entertained. And we'd have 5 children in the car. Dad would be pointing out things like, oh, look at the way that plateau over there. See how it's flat on top, right? So I learned about like land masses long before school ever taught me. So geography was always easy for me because Dad was always pointing out like, that's a peak, that's a plateau, that's a valley, and this was what he did to entertain us.
On our trip this weekend, you were talking about sediment levels with our children, and all of us are like, boring.
I beg to differ. The kids, I only was talking about sediment levels because the kids were asking me why the canyon wall was painted different colors. I was like, well, children, that's actually not paint.
And that went on for 3 hours.
It's a complicated scientific thing, all right? Look, as a 5th grade teacher, I've covered sediment levels. I wasn't talking to her anyways. I was not talking to her. But
seriously, sometimes I feel like I'm married to such a Dorcas.
So the other thing my dad would do that would drive me crazy, he had such a good eye for wildlife while he was driving, right? Now, you notice that when I was driving, I was telling you and all the kids, like, hey, if you see a deer, let me know.
Yeah.
Right? My dad would never do that. He would always be the one spotting the deer. And it would always bug me. I'd be like, Dad, watch the road. And there's times he'd be pointing out the side window way up the mountain, like, there's an elk. And I'd be like, yeah, windy road, Dad, please. So that always drove me crazy. But last summer, the weirdest thing happened. Because normally we don't pull out the DVD players for our kids unless it's like a long trip.
Sure.
Right? With the long trip, we don't want the kids, bugging us. We kind of have it. Right, you'll go crazy if you're in the car for, 10 hours and you've got children back there, right? Yeah. So I kind of get it with your mom. Like, I've never implemented the throwing of the ice scraper, but it's not a bad idea.
It wasn't just ice scrapers, registration books, manuals for your car.
Anything you can find. Whatever, the closest thing to reach.
The cool thing about her purse was, like, she would never let go of the strap, so she'd just whack the whole thing at you and then pull it back so it could be used as a future weapon, just in case needed a repeat offender.
That's next level stuff right there.
Yeah, she invented the disciplining in the car.
Oh, yeah.
Which is funny because you are totally different in the car than me. Like, you want silence, but you want to talk the whole time. Whereas I grew up, like, never talking in the car. And I think it drives you crazy that I just, like, I'm totally silent in the car. And then I always want to listen to music. And you're like, no, we're not listening to music. Like, you like it to be silent, but talking.
No, I like listening to music. I just don't like listening to your music.
Whatever. We've never listened to music in the car.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like conversation.
Hold on. With the exception of any sort of, like, operatic. Is that how you say
operatic?
Operatic. He likes opera music. And, like,
whoa.
Lame as a Rob. One time we listened to that whole thing on the way to the coast.
When you say opera, people are picturing, like, Italian fat ladies singing in Italian.
Whatever.
That's not what I listen to. I like any music that has a story that goes the length of a full album. So that I can listen to the story as it progresses.
The man has the entire album of Hamilton memorized.
Yeah,
I'm just
I do.
saying. It's like any sort of musical would be perfect for Clyde's listening experience in the car. And for me, it's like snooze fest. I would rather literally, like, poke my eardrums out.
Which is fine, because you usually fall asleep.
Listen to Lame as a Rob again, I may actually blow my brains out. I'm just saying. Or Phantom of the Opera.
Phantom of the Opera is a great play.
Oh my gosh.
Remember when we went and saw that live and I was moved to tears at the end and then you were looking at me like, Clyde, what's wrong with you? And I was like,
you couldn't even see the people. We were so far back in the nosebleeds. I could see nothing, and Clyde is freaking crying next to me.
I could see it. I thought it was so amazing. You know, I had waited
oh my gosh,
my whole adult life to see it because I hadn't seen it since I was 17, and I finally got to see it, and, you know, I was moved to tears.
I think
what can I say?
It must be because you're just more cultured than I was. Like, your family took you to, you know, plays and things.
Yeah.
Like, you went to big auditoriums and watched things like Phantom of the Opera. I didn't even know that existed, you know? So it was totally a different life. But now, if we're going to listen to music, you'd prefer to listen to something like that, whereas I would rather listen to, like, anything else, you know?
Well, it does kind of take me back to my childhood because when we would go on long road trips, that's what we would listen to. There were 3 options, and I may have mentioned this before, but there were 3 options. It was either Roy Orbison, the Beach Boys, or like Phantom of the Opera or Les Miserables. Mm-hmm. And the thing is Roy Orbison, my dad would sing at the top of his lungs, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
Beach Boys, my mom would dance, and like, you don't want to see mom dance. It's weird. At least with like Phantom of the Opera or Les Miserables, it's like 2.5 hours. So it makes the trip go by fast. Like if you listen to Phantom and then Les Miserables, by the time it's over, you're at grandma's house.
I don't know. I disagree, but okay.
All right. So last year when we were on our family vacation, we're driving. We've been in the car for quite some time. And the kids, they're watching in the back, their like TV screens. And as we're driving down the freeway, I see a sign that says there's like a free zoo, but it's not really like a zoo. It's like a farm that some guy imported like African animals to be on his farm. And he set it up so it's kind of this free drive-through zoo. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm like yelling back to the kids. I'm like, kids, you want to stop? Let's see what African animals the guy has. And they're all like, I don't want to. And I'm like, come on, guys. Mm-hmm. So we pull off the freeway. We drive over to where this little free zoo is. And we're driving through. The first thing we see is a camel, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, there's a camel. And the boys in the back have no interest whatsoever, right? Like, I'm like, there it is. And I see Rex out of the corner of my eye from the back seat. He's like, where? But he didn't even look up from his movie screen.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, where? And I'm like, right out the freaking window. Yeah. And he won't look. And he's just like, He's like, who cares about camels? Next thing you know, there's like giraffes. And I was like, oh my gosh, guys, giraffes. And I'm trying to like be animated and get these kids excited. But they're so locked into their movie, they won't look up. Do you remember all the animals that we saw there?
It doesn't matter, Clyde.
A whole bunch of animals. You're right. It doesn't matter.
Get on with your story.
The whole time. They never freaking looked up from their screens.
Right.
I was so frustrated. I said to the kids, I was like, what are you guys watching that's so important that you can't look up and enjoy a little bit of wildlife? And they were like, we're watching We Bought a Zoo. I was like, what the hell? I was like, this is like the real We Bought a Zoo happening right outside this car. Whoever made this free little park actually bought a zoo. Yet you guys are locked into this movie. It just pissed me the freak off. Yeah. So much so that I was like, all right, give me the DVD players. You guys are done. I was like, I've had it with you guys and your entitled new generation. And from that point on, they were like, what are we supposed to do? And I'm like, look out the window. I'm like, play the ABC game. They're like, this is lame. I'm like, we're going to play the license plate game. They're like, what's a license plate?
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, dude, I knew what a license plate was from the time I was like 4 because of the license plate game.
Sometimes I have to remind you, times have changed. Our kids do not have the exact same childhood that you have. And they don't have a mom like you had. So I'm just saying, they're not dorks.
Your greatest accomplishment. Making our kids cool.
They are cool. They're way too cool for us. They're so much cooler than I ever was. Seriously, sometimes the things they say, I'm like, dude, why didn't I ever say that?
I'm like, I wish I would have thought of that.
I know. Like, seriously, they inspire me every day.
And here's the thing. Even though I complain about the fact that they're missing out on the outdoors or whatever, I would have killed for a DVD player for my family trips. I tell you, it's all out of jealousy. Like, this rage I have is not that I'm mad at them. I'm mad at that I was not born a generation later. Like, road trips would be awesome if I didn't have to play that stupid alphabet game, right?
It's true.
Or if I didn't have to play the license plate game.
You want to know what, though? Road trips are probably a lot more awesome for us than they were for your parents, because our kids do have something to entertain them. Like, your mom had to come up with all those activities. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I should actually ask my mom if she enjoyed playing those games.
Saint. Like, I feel like we owe her so much. Like, she is a freaking saint. I seriously love your mom more than almost any other person on the planet.
She's a good woman.
I mean, I wish I was more like her, and I'm sure she wishes I was more like her too. But yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she's a good woman, despite the fact that she kicked my brother into a dishwasher.
That never happened, Clyde.
Sure it did.
So, on our way to the woods, we passed a free-range chicken farm.
Yes, we did. Speaking of farm, not as cool as the African farm, but there was a big sign. It said free-range chickens.
Yes, these are free-range chickens. It's a chicken farm. I personally shop at a store where you can buy free-range chickens, and I pay like a significant amount of money for these free-range chickens because I've heard it's better for the environment, for the world. The chickens didn't grow up in cages with like oversized breasts and all this crap, right?
You can tell who did the grocery shopping just by looking at the price. If I do the grocery shopping, I'm buying all the stuff that's cheap and loaded up on roids and stuff like that, right?
Exactly.
I'm buying things that were in cages
which is why I don't let you do the grocery shopping.
It's more efficient, right? I'm not buying organic. I'm not buying like anything that has like a catch to it.
That's exactly why I don't trust you to go shopping. You're the worst.
I'm sorry, but you know what? We learned something driving by this
so back to what I was talking
chicken
about.
Thing.
I've really prided myself on purchasing, cage-free chickens that are free range and cage-free eggs and things made with cage-free things. Like, I'm really all about that. Well, to my disappointment, we passed a chicken farm today that had free-range chickens, all organic, I'm sure. There were probably 5,000 chickens, like, in this field. It was crazy. I've never seen that many chickens in one location. Granted, they were free range, but I bet they had less than a foot around them of walking space.
Oh, yeah. It's like instead of cages, you are caged in by biomass.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And they had like a pretty decent size like hen house where I'm sure they go to like lay their eggs and stuff. But holy crap. Like, I could not believe the number of chickens that this farm had. And it like sort of made me disappointed because when I think about my chicken that I buy, I think he's got a name. His name's probably like Frankie,
You're picturing one chicken on this farm, and there's like a little kid that pets it every day and feeds it corn.
He's been loved, He's got a couple of his pals on the farm with him. Like,
sure.
I create a whole storyline for every chicken that I purchase and eat, right? It definitely wasn't the story that I saw today. So now I have to rethink this whole thing. I felt bad for those chickens.
Yeah. Can we go back to buying the caged chickens, please? Rosie, I like to develop a storyline for the chickens I buy too.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, this here is prisoner 24601. He was falsely accused, but it doesn't matter, and now he's dead and on my plate.
Oh my gosh. I think honestly I'm just going to go meat free. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I'm still in shock, right? This just happened today. I still don't know how to feel or what to think.
Look, it's bad timing for you to go meat free because you're also gluten free now.
I know.
So meat is the only thing holding this family together.
I just couldn't believe it. Like, I don't know. I just had a total different picture in my head of these cage-free chickens that I've been buying. I had no idea that they lived on farms with like 5,000 other chickens, like with barely any room to roam. I mean, granted, they were roaming. They weren't in cages, but holy freaking crap.
I know. Rosie, the thing is, you're innocent, you know? Which is a nice way of saying you're naive.
Yeah.
Right? Look, the thing is there's billions of Americans. Actually, I way overshot that number, but there's millions of Americans and they all got to eat chicken, right? Mm-hmm. And so in an ideal world, there would be enough farms for every chicken to have its own farm and every chicken to have the kind of relationship that Wilbur has with the little girl in Charlotte's Web.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there's just not space for that. We got to shove as much chickens in as possible. So either they have cages and they live in these cages, or they just shove them in, you know, to one farm. And it's like, how many millions of chickens can we fit in this one farm to maximize the amount of money? And really, I think the free range chicken thing was actually created by farmers, too cheap to buy appropriate caging, right? It's like,
we got a lot of land.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in the farmers. Yeah,
let's just build a fence around this land and put, 5,000 chickens on it. But the cutest thing were the little baby chickens, though.
Oh, baby chicks are very cute.
Those were so cute. They were roaming around amongst all the other chickens. It was pretty cute. But I don't know. I have to rethink this whole thing. So this got me thinking about the farm, right? Like the family farm and how much that has changed in today's day and age, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that the farm looks the same today as it did, even when we were kids, right?
Well, honestly,
we're mass producing food in extreme, right? Like these gigantic farms that do very specific things,
And I talked about Charlotte's Web earlier, and I feel like books like that and different movies we've seen have given people an idealistic view of what farms are, right?
Yeah.
Like this sweet little girl that makes friends with all the farm animals and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that type of farm is not out there, but if that farm is out there, that's like the family farm that just this supports our family.
Sure.
Right? That's not the kind of farm that's feeding America.
Yeah.
Right? And so I actually got to go to one of these farms. It was for a teacher training. They wanted us to know, and it was actually kind of a cool experience, but they wanted us to know the cycle of milk in America. Right?
Yeah,
so where do they take us to? A cow farm. Mm-hmm. Right? We go outside of town. There's this huge farm. I would say they had well over 300 cattle on this farm. Stinkiest place I've ever been in my life. It was bad, right?
Yeah.
But the guy, the farmer's son comes out to greet us. He looks like he's about 22 years old. He's kind of a surfer dude. He's got this blonde, long hair, right?
The farmer looks different today than he did when we were kids.
And
you don't see the big straw hat with a guy with a piece of straw out his...
What's hilarious is he was wearing no shirt, but he was wearing those fishing coveralls that are waterproof.
Yeah.
Right? And I was thinking, why on earth would he wear these? But I got it later when I saw all the crap he was trudging through,
Yeah.
But he takes us into this warehouse. He's like, I'm going to show you where we get the milk.
I want to come back, though, to this, what farmers wear. Growing up, farmers wore, overalls, right?
Yeah. And the plaid shirt underneath.
Exactly.
The blue plaid shirt or the red plaid shirt.
The farmer of today wears, Carhartts and Vans shoes with, a sleeveless shirt.
Oh, yeah. There's not really an official dress code for the farmer.
He's got long hair, probably in a man bun. That's the farmer of today, right? And he's preaching farm to table type stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The farmer has changed.
Yeah, it has. And honestly, some of the science behind some of this is amazing, right?
Yeah.
You picture farming as just go out, take care of the animals. It's gone so far beyond that.
Oh, technology is incredible.
Yeah. So he was showing us what they feed the cattle, right? And basically what they do is they take corn stalks and they chop them up, but they chop them in a certain way because they've done all this research And it turns out they absorb more if they're cut at a certain angle, but then not broken all the way through. So the chips that these corn stalks were cut into looked really strange, right? But the guy gave us this whole like lecture about how scientists are studying how to make cattle grow faster because there's so much money in it. And so he's like, everything now is streamlined. Everything now is scientific. It's no longer we just go out and, whatever kind of grass grows or whatever, that's what the cow eats. It's not like that anymore.
Weren't you saying it takes like 1 million gallons of water to raise a cow?
Yeah, I saw that in a documentary. Which that person was saying we got to get rid of the cows, but I'm not necessarily saying that.
How many gallons of water does it take to grow a cow?
I don't know. See,
Probably like a milking cow would need more water than just like a bowl or something.
Yeah, I don't remember. And I almost feel like I shouldn't even talk about this because my number is going to be so far off. But the guy did some kind of math where he divided or he took the amount of water that each cow gets throughout its lifetime and then divided it by the number of hamburgers you can make out of that cow.
Yeah.
Right? And it comes out to about 100,000 gallons per hamburger. And those numbers are probably completely wrong. But it was some extremely high number like that. And this guy was like, dude, we got to stop eating cows. We gotta follow the Indian people.
Dude.
In India, they don't eat cows, right?
You can take many things away from human beings, but I don't think you can take beef away from them.
Don't get between me and a good hamburger. I'm telling you.
Like, seriously, beef is like, every man I know, beef is their favorite meat. So continue. You're on a beef farm.
Okay, so the guy takes me into this factory where they have machinery that hooks up to these cows to pump. Right, it's not like the kid with a bucket singing "Howdy Doody" as he like milks the cow. Did the cows
like seem okay with it? Like, were they upset about it?
I'm sure it's like me as a child. Like, I didn't know better, so I was like, okay, this is reality. Whatever.
This is what we do.
It's normal to watch your brother get kicked into a dishwasher. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah,
3 times a day you go into here, you get hooked up to a machine.
Yeah, seriously. Anyways, but they were up on these like high-rise stables, and we're walking in this aisle down the middle, and the guy is like, he like looks over at me, and keep in mind, I'm with a whole bunch of teachers, so I'm the only male, and there's like 30 females with me.
Yeah.
And the guy all of a sudden says, "Hey, dude, you might not want to step so close to that side." And I was like, I looked at him, and I was like, "Are you talking to me?" And right then, a cow just pissed on me. I was like, oh my gosh. And he's like, "Told you, dude." I'm like,
you're like, listen, you and the man bun,
I know.
knock it off.
I was like,
don't
first
talk
of all,
to me like that.
You can call me sir. All right. I am your elder.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So the rest of the time I'm walking around smelling like cow piss, which is not pleasant, but that's life. So he points over to this tractor in the far distance that's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Nowhere near any cows or anything.
Sure.
And we're like, "Hey, what's going on over there?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's my sister driving the tractor." And so some girl makes a joke like, "Oh, that's nice. You let your sister have the driving job." And he's like, "No, she's got the manure job." So pretty much he explains that the sister's job is to go around and collect all the cow poop. They put it in this pile. They end up selling it for manure.
You can sell manure for like a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. This was a milk farm.
Yeah.
But there were multiple ways that they made money. Because the first way that they made money was milk.
Sure.
But the second way was selling all the cow manure.
Yeah.
And then the third way was every time one of these cows had a baby, which I think they have to keep constantly getting her pregnant so that she'll produce milk, although I could be wrong about that. That's kind of my assumption.
Yeah. Just so you know, guys, Clyde doesn't actually know anything.
I know nothing about anything, so I don't know why people are listening right now. Right? I see things, I make assumptions. I see things, I make assumptions. All right?
Fact.
Right. So anyways, so the guy is like, "Hey, have you guys ever seen a cow less than 2 hours old?" And we're all like, "What? No." And he's like, "Yeah, it's over here in this shed." So he takes us over.
Treat.
Yeah, he opens the shed door, and in here is this tiny, although not that tiny, like the size of a Doberman, a full-grown Doberman. here's this little cow.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, yeah, this thing's 2 hours old. One of old Betsy just gave birth 2 hours ago. Although, let's be honest, there were 300 cows there. It wasn't Betsy. It was like 24601 gave birth to this guy. And we're like, oh, how cute. And he's like, yep, but that one's male, so we have no use for it. And we're like, we're like, what's going to happen to this guy? And they're like, oh, we sell him because there's a beef farm right up the road. So basically when they give birth, if it's female, they keep it because that will one day produce milk. If it's male, they send it a mile up the road so that it can, be raised and grow into somebody's hamburger one day. I know.
I don't think I can ever eat beef
It's
again.
a depressing life, right?
Yeah. Every time I look into a cow's eyes, it makes me want to cry for every hamburger I've ever eaten.
Then what I thought was really fascinating was someone said, can I just come buy milk from you guys? And he was like, absolutely not. Are you trying to get us under federal regulation? File 47521 or whatever. And we're like, what? And it's like this weird surfer farmer dude suddenly has knowledge and knows facts. It's weird, but right? But he's like, look.
Oh, he knows facts because he's been fined a time or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He owes the IRS like $6 billion.
Oh, yeah. He's like,
he knows that fact by heart.
Yeah, he's like, milk has to be federally regulated. We don't choose the price of milk.
So it's like gas?
Yeah, it's kind of like gas. It's all federally regulated, right?
Interesting.
So have you ever noticed
Does that mean that they so they'll dictate how much that they can make off of their milk, basically?
I'm not sure exactly. He didn't go too much into it, but all he said is we weren't allowed to drive out and buy directly from the source.
So do you think that the farmer actually makes any money off of his milk? I'm sure he does. I mean, he wouldn't have a milk
He has
farm.
to, but
Okay, here's a good question to ask the farmer. If you ever get to go back again, since you and Surfer Dude are now friends.
No, I think I insulted him. If not before, now publicly, so I'll never be invited back.
Anyways, an interesting fact would be, do you make more money off of the manure, the sell of boy cows, or the milk?
Or the whoring of his sister? I don't know.
That was rude.
Oh, snap.
Clyde,
I'm sorry, dude. I'm
you
sorry,
are a horrible
Farmer.
Human being. And I'm sorry,
Farmer
sister.
Ted. I'm going to call him Ted.
Dude.
Seems like a surfer name. Well, you kind of grew up on a little farm.
Yeah.
Kind of the Charlotte's Web farm.
Yes.
Let's call it that.
That's exactly right. I did grow up on a farm.
So, ish, right?
I mean, it was more of a farm when my dad was around, and then once my dad left, it was just sort of like barren land. When my parents bought the piece of land that my mom still lives on, the dream was that it would be like a farm-to-table farm where my dad could sell, vegetables or meat or eggs, and we could live off the land, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and your dad grew up going into the forest, picking stuff and selling.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of like you did, actually.
Yeah, like,
right? So the whole idea was,
it was normal.
If we can self-sustain this, we won't have to go coning anymore and go dig up pine cones.
We don't have to ever pick another mushroom in the forest. It'll be great. We got the land. We hauled our trailer. We literally moved our trailer from the trailer park to the middle of nowhere on a mountain.
Near the top of that mountain.
Near the top of the mountain. I learned to drive in 3 feet of snow.
Going down a 45-degree incline.
Like, we're lucky that I'm here, guys. It was crazy. So anyways, they bought the land, and instantly my dad purchased 4 pigs, 2 cows, 15 chickens, like 100 rabbits. We had so many rabbits. And we had a little farm going, The thing was, though, we could never name an animal after, like, a real name. It always had to be named what it would become. So, like...
Interesting.
Yeah. So it would be like ham,
or pork chop.
Or pork chop.
Bacon.
Bacon. Except for the chickens. Those guys had real names.
Oh, really? I was hoping you had a chicken named Gizzard.
No.
Dang it.
The chickens all had real names. I don't know why. I mean, yeah.
Can I guess some of like your animals' names?
Sure.
Did you have cows? You said
yeah,
cows,
2
right?
cows, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to guess one of them was T-Bone.
Yes.
Dude, so
T-Bone
obvious.
was hilarious too because he was like, he had mental problems.
That's funny. In high school, I had a friend named T-Bone with mental problems. What a coincidence.
He was really funny because when he was a baby, we got him on discount because he... When he was a baby, he got hit in the head really hard, and so he always walked sideways. So, like, when you'd call him from, like, the field, he literally he'd walk sideways to get to you. Like, he never walked straight forward. He always walked sideways.
Yeah, the farmer that
weird.
sold him was like, "Hey, Martha, this one ain't walking right. I don't think we can sell him full price."
Yeah. So anyways, we had him. And then we had Norman, which Norman had a real name because yeah, I know. He came with a real name. That was the thing. So the farmer who sold us Norman had already named him.
He's like, "I'll sell you Norman under one condition.
Yeah.
He keeps his name."
Exactly. So he was the only farm animal that ever came with a name. But yeah, he had a name. Farming was really interesting when the well went dry and we had to like haul water.
Yeah, that 100,000 gallons. Were you taking trips up and down the mountain?
It was bad. Like, we had to haul so much water just to, like, you know, give water to the animals as well as us. And at one point, my dad had, like, strung together the most hoses I have ever seen strung together. And he strung it all the way from the neighbor's house to the edge of our field so that he could fill up this trough with water.
Wait a minute. Did the neighbor have running water?
Yeah, like they had a deeper well than us or something. I don't know.
Wow.
And he'd like pay the guy to fill up the trough, but he wouldn't let us have any other water, so we had to like scavenge water other places. It was a weird relationship. I don't really understand it myself. Anyways, so we had this little farm, you know, and we raised animals and had a garden and we're like self-sufficient, you know. And then 3 years later, my parents got divorced and my mom sold all the farm animals and it was done.
What a sad story. You just brought this podcast way down, Rosie.
So I know, like, from firsthand experience what it's like to own a Charlotte's Web type farm because I was feeding the animals.
Would you make friends with them?
Yes, I
could
had
totally see
relationships
you
with these animals. And then when it would come time to butcher, like, it was like the saddest, most horrific thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it was horrible. So one of the last farm animals that I would kept was rabbits. Like, I'd always have a rabbit around.
In fact, when we first met, you were telling me about this awesome rabbit you had named Delilah.
Yeah, and I hadn't quite had the time to go rescue her yet from my dad's house when I took you there. And I was like, hey, I'm here to pick up Delilah. And my dad was like, yeah, Delilah was delicious. We ate her. I'm like, you can't eat Delilah. Like, are you kidding?
Like, Delilah's family.
Yeah. Seriously, my dad didn't care. Like, animals were food, you know?
Yeah. You know, Rosie, I feel like this is the perfect time for you to tell the audience about Bubba.
Bubba was my dog. He was really cool. He was half Rottweiler, half Saint Bernard.
Yeah, he wasn't a dog. He was a monster.
Yeah, he was so cool. He was like, he basically looked like the dog off of The Sandlot.
Oh, yeah, he looked exactly like that dog, except not the way the dog looked in the end when you realized he was just a dog. He actually looked like the monster version that they were all scared of. Seriously, this dog was a monster.
Bubba was cool. Like, he was so
How did you come to get Bubba, though?
Okay, so one of the neighbors had a litter of pups, and Bubba was one of them. And so I just got him.
You just, out of the kindness of your heart, were like, hey, I'm in no position to own a dog, but hey, I'll take this thing that's going to grow to be huge.
Exactly. And my dad has always taken in the animals that I've adopted. Like, I've been terrible at collecting
a good sport
animals.
about that.
He is really a good sport. Like,
now,
I decided I was going to get Bubba. This was like 6 months before I moved to Colorado. And I didn't know that I was going to meet Phil and move here. So it was like, I thought my life was going to be there, and I got Bubba. And Bubba was a pup at that time. And then he was growing and
growing. Yeah. Didn't you say he thought he was a lap dog because you spoiled him too much when he was a pup?
Yeah, I used to let him sit on my lap when I would drive, but he got so big that he barely even fit in the front seat of my car. He was gigantic. He stopped entire motor vehicles.
Oh, yeah. Which, don't give it away. We got stories about Bubba, but imagine a horse trying to sit on your lap. That's what this was like.
Oh, he was so cute, though. He seriously had the cutest face I've ever seen in my whole life. And Bubba loved me. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah, he
Bubba
did.
just thought I was the best.
Hated me, but loved you.
So my dad adopted Bubba when I moved to Colorado, and he was a good sport about it.
And your dad had recently moved out into the country, was living in this tiny little place, kind of doing the same thing that he was apparently doing before, where he was raising bunnies and chickens. And,
he had a whole farm thing
and
going.
so Bubba had all this land to run around, right?
He was a real farmer. My dad actually wore overalls.
Oh, yeah.
And, he never had a man bun.
He didn't, Ted. He did it right, Ted. So,
my dad's
Bubba,
the kind of farmer that goes out into his farm and he's got a piece of straw in his mouth or a toothpick, he was a good dude. He is a good dude.
Absolutely.
Dude, I love my dad so much. Dad, I love you.
So back to Bubba. Bubba would basically just roam the land around your dad's house, right? And your dad
he was a guard dog.
Yeah, and your dad would have fences to try to keep Bubba in, but Bubba would not be contained.
No. Bubba had his own world.
And he was living in a town that only had about 75 people.
Yeah.
The town had two public buildings. One was a church and one was a school or something like that.
Post office.
A post office. Right. You had to go to the next town to get to the school. My bad.
Yeah.
It was the kind of town that doesn't even have a city hall. They just meet at the house of the mayor or whatever. Bubba would escape and...
The whole town knew Bubba.
Oh, yeah. The whole town knew and feared Bubba. But according to you and your dad, Bubba was just a big doof and just wanted to play.
Dude, we love
but
Bubba.
Everyone else was terrified of this dog. And your dad told this story about the time Bubba got out and went in the middle of the road and this car was coming and stopped.
Yeah.
And Bubba was so tall that he was basically standing in front of the hood, but looking eye to eye with the driver. And this person was just so terrified and started honking the horn, hoping it would scare the dog away, but he wouldn't move.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So they'd rev the engine, it wouldn't move.
Yeah.
So they call 911 and the cops have to come and the cops are scared to get out of their car because Bubba is this terrifying monster.
Oh my God.
But they all know who it is. So they call your dad. They're like, hey, you got to come get your dog. He's like, I'm at work. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Seriously, that was the type of dog
but the
this
sheriff
was.
knew Bubba, so the cop actually called the sheriff. The sheriff came out and was like, Bubba, come on, let's go home. And then
Bubba just do.
Wait, I guess we're
I'm
going
trotting
home now.
It's I'll follow this guy now. Yeah.
Dude, I love that dog so much.
Yeah, so I had heard stories about Bubba and about how sweet and lovely he was. Now, I had seen pictures, but all the pictures I saw were when he was a pup.
I know.
So I had
cute.
and he was a cute pup, but I had no idea how big he was going to be. The first time we met your dad, or I guess you had already met him, but the first time I met your dad,
very well.
You're familiar with him.
Yes.
I'm not at this point, right? So I'm trying to impress
is the junking
him.
Weekend.
Yeah, I'm trying to impress him, win him over, let him know that hey, I knocked your daughter up, I'm going to marry her type of thing, right? And I'm a good guy, despite the fact that I just knocked your daughter up. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when I get into town, first thing Rosie asks about is Delilah the bunny, which apparently had been consumed. And then she asks about Bubba.
Right.
And your dad said, well, I had to give Bubba over to Frank.
Right.
And you're like, what? Why? And
because Bubba ate 50 pounds of food a week.
Yeah.
At this point. And my dad could not afford to
basically
feed Bubba.
Couldn't afford it. And then he also said, with my fencing, I'm having a hard time keeping Bubba in. And the city said they're going to find me at some point if Bubba keeps disturbing the public, right?
And you're like, sir, your fence is 6 feet tall.
Because apparently one time Bubba, keep in mind, there's not even a school in this town. He ran to the next town and went into the yard of the school, and they had to have a lockdown where no one was allowed out of the building because they didn't know what this wild animal was.
Yeah.
Right? And so his stepdaughter at some point like looked out a window and was like, that's not a wild animal, that's Bubba. Right? So your dad's like, I had to get rid of Bubba. I'm sorry.
Bubba is legend in that town.
Yeah, he is a legend, right?
May Bubba rest in peace, by the way.
So the next morning, I go junking with your dad.
Yeah.
And the whole time he's telling me, oh, I can't wait for you to meet Bubba. So then Sunday morning comes and we go to a church service with your dad, which we just walk over. Small town, you know, it's just right across the street and around the corner. We walk over to the church building. And as it turns out, this Frank guy who is housing Bubba now lives right next door to the church.
Yes.
Right? So as soon as we're done with the church,
which was a really interesting church, it had the pastor was like a motorcycle guy wearing full leathers, giving a sermon.
Picture Sons of Anarchy. Like he's got one of those leather vests with like some death to the cop symbol on the back, and you're like,
and he did the whole thing playing a guitar.
Oh yeah, he's like, sing with me, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Jesus loves us, but he hates the frickin' cops. No, he didn't say that.
It was like a really interesting sermon because too, he just do one strum and he'd be like, this strum inspires me to tell you Jesus loves us all.
Yeah, so this was like a new experience for me because I'd only been to the church of my parents, the church of my childhood, right?
Yeah.
Rosie, she's like, oh, I go to weird churches with my mom all the time or whatever. So
and Dad.
Yeah, so she's like, nothing new to me, whatever.
Yeah. I once went to a church sermon that was out of the back of a guy's camp trailer.
That sounds fascinating. Did he bless the sacrament?
Yeah.
He's like, we don't have wine, brothers and sisters, but I got some Coors.
No, he had wine. It was fascinating. I mean, I've been to a lot of really interesting church gatherings.
Not
Anyways.
me.
Well, you have because you went to the motorcycle guy.
Oh, yeah, that's the only one. All of mine, I pretty much slept through. So
sure.
Also, keep in mind, everyone in this church service is dressed like a farmer or like no one dressed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wearing like a suit because keep in mind, I'm trying to impress, you know?
Right.
So I'm like, oh, we're going to church. Let me go get my Sunday best on. And
I'm in jeans.
Yeah, and I come out and I'm like, Rosie, aren't you going to dress up for church? And she's like, I am dressed.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what?
This is what you wear to church, Clyde.
So it's weird if you ever go to a church service and you've like outdressed the pastor.
They think you're there to give the sermon.
Yeah. People keep coming up. They're like, I could do it. I could hold my own.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the guy hand you the guitar and get inspired by John 13 too.
I've got some scriptures memorized, right?
Yeah.
John 11:35. Jesus wept.
Oh,
there you go, brothers and sisters. That's the shortest verse in the Bible.
Yeah.
Anyways, so after this church service, your dad says, oh, let's go over to Frank's yard and see Bubba, right? So we're walking over there. I would say when we're a good 50 yards away, I spot Bubba because he's a freaking monster. And I'm like, oh, he's
and Bubba
got...
spots me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Bubba loves
Well, first
me.
I'm like, oh, he's got horses. And you're like, no. And I'm like, what's that? And you're like, that's Bubba.
That is
I'm
Bubba.
like, holy cow. And as soon as Bubba sees you, he's freaking out.
He's so happy.
Now, he's got him in one of those like giant chain link fence kennels.
Yeah.
Right? And Bubba's like contained in this thing. But the second he sees Rosie, he starts jumping up and pushing on the fence. And like, I'm surprised this whole thing didn't come down, right? Like this thing was shaken and it wasn't staked in very well.
And the thing is Bubba had grown since I saw him last, because when I saw him last, he could stand on his back legs and hug me. And I'm 5'2". So he was big then.
Now he could stand on his legs and hug me.
Yeah. You're 6'2".
Yeah. I'm a foot taller than you. right? Anyways, no,
Yeah.
he was standing up with his hands up on the chain link fence when we walked up to him. And he is just sitting here drooling at the mouth, like foaming, like he's rabid or something. But it's all because he's so excited to see Rosie, because he loves Rosie. Yeah. And then he looks over at me, gives me...
He instantly hates you.
Yeah, he gives me this weird glare. And all of a sudden, and still standing, still hands on the chain link, all of a sudden he just starts shooting pee at me. Pees all over my church pants, my leg, my shoe. And I'm like, what the? And while he did it, he just maintained eye contact. Like it wasn't accidental. Gosh. And then you were like, oh, that's silly. Bubba just had to pee. And I'm like, no, he didn't freaking pee. He's sending a message. He's like letting me know, like, dude.
She's my girl.
Yeah, like, you better back off. I will kill you. I will take you. And he probably could.
Yeah.
So...
and you never actually let Bubba out of the cage because you were too afraid of him.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So then you left, and that's when Frank let me in, and I could, like, snuggle with Bubba, and he was so happy to see me.
Yeah, well... apparently you were his first love.
And his only, probably.
He was like, Mama!
Big dogs like that don't live very long, and poor Bubba, he did eventually die.
Bubba's dead?
Bubba's dead.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
All the school children are safe again.
Frank ended up selling him or giving him away to a farm where they had actually more land. And so he lived out the rest of his days on a really large farm.
Yeah, well, that's what Bubba needed.
Yeah.
And that's also the sad thing about dogs. You know,
they don't live forever.
They don't. They become part of your life. They become part of your family. Mm-hmm. And when I was in the Army, this was probably the first time I was exposed to this, because I had a dog when I was little, but we weren't like super attached to him.
Yeah.
He was an outdoor dog, you know, and when my dad put him to sleep, we were kind of like, oh, that's sad, but whatever. But when I was in the Army, there was this guy. I mean, he was hardcore. He was a badass. He was one of those guys that would take cold showers just because he was convinced it made you tougher. And in the Army, you meet weird people like that sometimes, but that's how this guy was. And one day he came into work and revealed that his dog of 15 years had died. And we were like, oh, sorry, man. And it had happened a couple days before. It happened at the start of his weekend. And he said, you know, I thought I was fine. And then I woke up in the morning, and my morning ritual is to wake up and then reach down and pet my dog. He's like, I woke up and I reached down to pet him, forgetting that he was there. And he just started bawling, telling us that story. I'm like, this is a guy you would never expect to see cry.
Dude,
like,
I'm crying right now. It's
I know. It was like, dude, you know, so that's the sad thing about dogs is they are family and they become a part of who you are, but they can't live as long as humans, you know? Yeah. So it's this short period of time in the grand scheme of things, you know? It's sad.
We're lucky. Charles is just a baby right now.
We've got at least 10 more years with him.
He's got that good leg now, you know?
I know. Extra strong because it's got metal in it. It's like Robo-Dog.
Yeah. So before we went on our drive to the woods today and saw the farm, did all this fun stuff, we actually stopped by your parents' house. Which was a big mistake. Like... I have said we will not have human contact, but we took a chance going to my parents' house. They needed some supplies. We were going to take them to them, only to find out that they're freaking crazy people. Yeah. So today's Idiot Spotlight goes out to the olds who think that they are not at risk of the virus.
Yeah, and it's driving me crazy because we should have never gone to their house.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
I was going there thinking like, well, we've been quarantined, they've been quarantined, so it's going to be fine.
Yeah, well, apparently we hadn't talked to them enough because once we got there, we realized that they're crazy people.
Yeah, they start telling me like, oh yeah, we went to the movie theater, and I was like what
nobody was there. It's
I know.
Like, oh my gosh, like you guys are going to get sick.
They're like, it was us and 3 other people. And I'm like, yeah, one of those could have it. Or the thing can live on surfaces from anywhere to 16 to hours to like
3 days or
3
something.
days or 7 days. 7 days is the big one I've heard.
And then they went on to tell us how they've been to Costco in the last day and a half. They go to the store. They went out to eat.
They're still playing pickleball.
Yeah. seriously.
They're like going to parks.
Yes. I'm like, you guys should be in your house. So today's idiot spotlight goes out to Clyde's parents.
And all the other olds who are
out and about.
Yes, they're as rebellious as teenagers. And I feel like we're the parents telling them to stay inside. It's like a reverse of my childhood.
Exactly. It's so weird to be the kids telling your parents, like, you guys got to stop going out. Like, you're crazy people. And then we had told our kids, like, okay, guys, we're going to go into grandma and grandpa's. You're not allowed to touch them. Like, you got to stay 6 feet away from grandma and grandpa. Because we don't know if we're carrying it. You know what I mean? Like, we could be carriers. We don't know. We could be non-symptomatic and then make our parents, like, really sick or something.
Yeah.
And so our kids are like, okay. Anyways, we get in the house and little Rosie just starts crying. And she was like, I don't know why I can't hug grandma. Freaking your mom is like, come over here, little Rosie. I'll give you a hug.
She's like, that's ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. And then she picks her up and she not only hugs her, she freaking kisses her right on the lips. I'm like, that's it.
It's like you just compromised the security of our entire family. Thanks a lot, Grandma.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Seriously. Your parents are like in their 70s, but they are not afraid at all. They're totally fearless.
No.
And you and I are terrified, but they are just absolutely fearless. I don't know who's right. Either we're wrong or they're wrong. I'm pretty sure it's them.
I don't know.
They're out of control.
They are out of control. My dad just keeps telling me, well, we're really healthy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you've got that condition that they keep talking about. Yeah, like old age.
Yes.
That's the number one leading condition that leads to death. It's like, dude, you're in your 70s. Stop acting like you're a millennial and you can just do whatever you feel like.
Stop going to the movies.
Yeah. It makes me think about my grandparents, though, who, bless their hearts, were lucky enough to die before this whole thing happened.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? But my grandparents, they were in their early adult life during World War II.
Sure.
Right? My grandpa served, but my grandma stayed behind. And if you ever listen to the stories my grandma would tell, she would talk about how you had to make sacrifices for the sake of the country, for the war. The stuff that they gave up was amazing.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
It was sacrifice everything. Right now, government officials are like asking people to stay inside, like slow the spread.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And people like won't do it. Like that was the thing.
Crazy.
When we were driving around, which we were not wanting human contact. We were just going to stay in the car and kind of look around at some scenery. We drove by a park and I don't know why the park wasn't closed in the first place, but there were at least 150 people at this park.
I know. It's crazy.
And I'm thinking back to my grandma telling me like, oh, I gave up everything to support the war, you know? And I'm like, dude, people won't give stuff up in today's day and age. It's crazy. So, if I could extend the idiot spotlight, please slow the spread. Stop going to movies.
Yeah. Dude, I tell you who you got to worry about is the teenagers. Like, they cannot stop mingling. So it turns out the new neighbors have teenage girls, and they must be the most popular girls at school because there's like 15 cars every day parked in front of our house right now. And they were all just like collecting on
all the 16-year-old girls at the whole school apparently are coming over
to
the house next door.
15 people in their front yard yesterday just talking and laughing and hugging and smiling. And I'm like, do you guys not recognize that this is like a time where you're supposed to be like inside or, you know, not collecting in groups? Like,
which, by the way, did you have that friend when you were young who had the cool parent and so everyone wanted to hang out at their house?
I spent a lot of time working.
Oh,
so I didn't.
Weird.
Yeah, I didn't hang out.
Interesting.
With a lot of people. All
right.
I had my one best friend and like sometimes we hung out.
I see. Sometimes I forget that I'm talking to a person that I can't relate to at all.
I know.
Right? When I was growing up.
You had that though. You had a friend.
And coincidentally, it lives in that very same house next door.
That is the hangout house.
Seriously.
Like, that's where
everyone who ends up living in that house ends up being the cool parents, but all the kids want to go and hang out at their house. I never was that house. Like, friends would come over to my house and be like, how come your parents don't turn on the AC? And I was like, what's AC? And they're like, yeah, let's not hang out here anymore. This is horrible.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So anyways, slow the spread, people.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you. We hope you enjoy Clyde and I. Don't forget that you can listen to our podcast on any of your favorite podcasting platforms.
Check out our website at ilovemyidiot.com. Get us out of the deep web, people. We're almost there.
We're almost there. We're one space away from being on the front page.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget that you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And don't forget to tell your idiot that you love them.
I love you, Clyde.
I love you too, Rosie.
Bye-bye.
I love my idiot.
But it would be nice if you'd make me a bowl of soup when I'm sick. Like, it's all I ask. But you won't do it. You're just like, no. It's almost like you're afraid that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And now, I bring you an outtake from tonight's episode. It's better than any salsa you can buy on the market. It's better than... Rosie!
I'm sorry.
It's Corona season. You don't sneeze in public.
I'm sorry. I just got a little sneezy.